Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Marvel Man 901. So today I'm going to do basically just X-Men comics and X-Men characters and all that. I'm going to start off with Hellfire Club. So this is basically a social club, at least for the public anyway. But it also is a bit of an evil mutant club as well. Basically the inner circle is run by Sebastian Shaw, and the other members are of course Harry Leland, Emma Frost, Mastermind, well somewhat anyway, Donald Pierce, Celine Tessa and Frederick Van Rohem. Others of course have been there as well, such as Phoenix before she became Dark Phoenix, and Magneto. Now it's a lot of these characters are dead at the moment. Harry Leland, I believe, Sebastian Shaw was killed by his son, I think. Celine is, well, maybe. She's a little bit difficult to kill, actually. Donald Pierce, maybe. Mastermind, he's dead. Emma Frost is now apparently in Iceman. More on that later on. And Rome is, of course, dead as well. Anyway, they also have this young academy thing for evil mutants. Well, evil mutants in training, I guess you can say. Basically like the X-Men. It's the Massachusetts Academy. So they basically train the Hellions there, for example, and also tried to train Firestar as well, but she did manage to realize that these are bad guys, so she kind of left. So that's that for Hellfire Club. Now we're gonna move on to Uncanny X-Men issue 313 from 1994. So this issue is basically continuing from the previous one, where the Phalanx attacked Gambit, Yokio, and Storm. So these three characters still fight Phalanx. A lot of things has happened though, and Gambit, even though he has a lot of animosity towards Yokio and the same way back, he still saved her, as she was basically the best friend of Storm, and he knew that Storm would be very upset if she died. While he was doing this, Storm was fighting Phalanx with a very good results, actually, holding it back at least. We learn a little bit more about Phalanx, at least that to the core it's Stephen Lang, who apparently was this scientist who got into a lot of problem, died a while back, then got somehow downloaded into Phalanx. I don't know, it's a little bit iffy there. Anyway, it also consists of Cameron Hodge, who is of course a major X-Men villain, and he kind of is this technological freak-ish way back too, so this kind of makes sense. And naturally, Stephen Lang has Cypher, or Douglas Ramsey / Warlock in the herd, Douglock maybe, basically trapped, trying to get information out of him. However, going back to the whole story here with Gambit, Storm, and Yokio is basically at death's door. He knows that any time now I will be assimilated. However, Gambit and Storm managed to create this huge explosion, which basically held back Phalanx at least a little bit. More on this probably later on in the next issue as well. Just a little sidebar before we're moving on to the next issue that I'm going to talk about today. Iceman was in fact basically comatose after the previous issue, where there was this kind of power overload thing when he was working on Emma Frost, who was ill apparently, kind of comatose before that too. He had been having weird reaction, basically getting all spiky and non-responsive, until the end of this issue, where he wakes up, or should I say she wakes up, as in fact Emma Frost had taken over his body. So that's going to be an interesting continuation in the next issue. So we're going to move on now to X-Men Unlimited issue 5. This is also a bit of a continuation of Operation Galactic Storm. Maybe you know about this, maybe you don't. I will explain a little bit here. Basically, Galactic Storm thing here was basically the Shi'ar and Kree war, which actually ended with the Kree leader, Supreme Intelligence, basically tricked the Shi'ar into creating this huge, powerful negabomb, and which exploded and almost killed every Kree. This was basically just to create a new, stronger race, apparently. But now the Shi'ar has taken over Hala, which was the prime Kree planet, the home planet, I guess. The few remaining surviving Kree were, of course, quite upset about this. So, to the story. The X-Men wake up to basically being forced to go along with a Shi'ar basically transport to Hala, apparently for a celebration about the whole overtaking of Hala. Well, it was of course a little upsetting. They had no idea about this and basically felt like they were forced. Anyway, they get there. This is of course Professor X, Storm, Jubilee, and Forge, who was there at the time at the mansion. I think mostly it was basically to have Professor X there, but the others had to come along as well, kind of. Anyway, of course, Professor X has a very close relationship to Lilandra, the Empress of the Shi'ar Empire. However, Deathbird, her sister, was actually the viceroy of Hala. Basically, this was a way for Lilandra to keep tracks on her, as Deathbird is actually a villain. She has tried to take the throne many times. But this is basically just to keep her from doing bad things, as she would be in the limelight or whatever. Anyway, so the ceremony continues. Jubilee basically moves away from the X-Men, basically to, I don't know, she's a little bit bored, wants to see other things basically. Very beautiful planet otherwise, so why not? She finds some rebels apparently who try to take Deathbird's life. The X-Men jump in and stops this, of course. The Kree rebel kills himself actually. Anyway, later on during the evening, Jubilee goes out again to find these rebels. This rebel girl who was actually the sister of that Kree who killed himself. She does find her, who take her, Jubilee, to the rest of the rebels, where she meets the leader, called Malaki, or something like that. Big guy, kind of, he's a little crude, but kinda is the whole leader, actually. He really feels like a leader more than just a rebel guy. Anyway, he basically he agrees to some peace talk with the X-Men, or Professor X at least. What he doesn't know later on is that Lilandra comes along as well, basically because, I mean, it's very risky, but she still wants to be there to actually talk. So they do talk, but the other two rebels remaining in this terrorist group basically decides to, no, they're not gonna work with the Shi'ar, so they're gonna basically leave and continue with their final ultimate plan, which basically would be to destroy the Stargate that the Shi'ar had built in their solar system, which basically led over to the solar system of Earth. The repercussion of that gate getting destroyed, however, would cause both the solar systems to be obliterated, which would kill a lot of people. Anyway, Malaki and the X-Men plus Lilandra move out into space to intercept the rebels. They just barely manages to prevent the whole situation. However, later on, Malaki is still being imprisoned for being a terrorist. Very sad story, but really good one at that. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to X-Men issue 21 from 1966. So this is, of course, further back. Basically, the continues from the previous issue, where the X-Men fought Lucifer. So they fight Lucifer yet again. Professor X is captive, and so are the X-Men as well, but they get out of the imprisonment. So we learn more about Lucifer's plan here. He's basically planning to enslave the planet, such as what his species has done before, using a very special device, very powerful device, basically that will take out the whole free will thought of any sentient being on Earth. However, the X-Men fight and actually manage to destroy several Ultra robots, as they're called. This is actually a repercussion that means that the Dominus machine, as it's called, will actually cease to work, thus stopping the plan. It's a good story. It's nice to see different villains like Lucifer and the Dominus overall. Last part now, we have an issue from 1994 yet again. X-Men 2099 issue 9. So this is basically continuing yet again with the X-Men this time the Xi'an X-Men, and Xi'an himself, being captured by another team of X-Men. This time they are led by Zhao, something like that. He's basically a psychopathic character. He's basically imagine telepathic, but extremely more than just that. Anyway, he basically killed the last remaining original X-Men, well, somewhat original anyway, of the original line, I guess, and then actually started to try to create new X-Men that he could control. He enhanced his old abilities a lot, and actually decided to go into Xi'an's brain and able to either corrupt him or destroy him. This was probably not the best way to do it, though, as Xi'an actually has an evil side that he has been trying to repress for a long time, but now he basically embraces it in order to fight Xi'an, and he wins. To fight Zhao, and he wins easily, actually. This, however, is maybe a little bit problem later on, as now the evil part is taking over, basically, and Xi'an is probably evil now. So that is that for today. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and do subscribe if you like this. All of this is, of course, Marvel's creations. I'm basically just telling the story, and stay safe.